Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the February 16th, 2022 Abington Finance Committee meeting. We are continuing with our series of meetings, meeting with different departments around the town in preparation for the fiscal year 23 budget. Tonight, we have the pleasure of having the school department here with us. We have our school superintendent, Peter Schaefer, and our assistant superintendent, Felicia Moschella. Sorry, Felicia. And we will be going over their budget. Excuse me. We also have our town manager, Scott Lambiase, and our town finance director, Sonia Hodge, here with us. Sonia is also the, excuse me, I got something in my throat. Sonia is also the, wow, I'm totally blanking on your title, Sonia. I apologize. Controller. No, collector. Treasurer, collector. Treasurer, collector, and finance director. There we go. My apologies for that. And I probably should have just put the agenda up because I have your titles on there. So let me just real quick share my screen. There we go. There's our agenda for tonight, the 16th of February. We will meet with the school department and then go through our normal business of liaison reports, correspondence, and minutes to review, though we do not have correspondence or minutes to review. A little foreshadowing there. Our next meeting will not be next week because of school vacation and lots of people taking vacations, including myself. Next meeting will be March 2nd. That meeting, we will return to in-person meetings at Town Hall. So if anybody wants to come out to Town Hall and watch us 2 weeks from tonight, you can. Not sure why you would want to, but you can. With that, I will turn the reins over to our school superintendent, Peter Schaefer.
Matt, sorry, do you want to do a quick roll call?
Yep. Good. I don't know why I keep forgetting that, but thank you, Barbara. Quick roll call for the finance committee members. I'll go around my screen. See Daniel Eddy.
Here.
Chris Murphy. Paul Haggerty.
Yep.
Andrew Leveralt.
Here.
Barbara Ray.
Here.
Greg Belazarian.
I'm here.
And Russ Fuller and Joe Rojas are not able to make it tonight. So that, and I am Matt Sala, and that is our committee. So now I will turn it over to Peter Schaefer to let us know how the school department is doing and give us his intro and anything else we might need to know.
I'm going to probably start and end saying the same things. First of all, thank you to the chair and the committee. I know the work that you do. You are all volunteers, and you look at where all of the precious resources are destined to be, and you put a lot of time in. You give up all your Wednesday nights. Appreciate you give us the time to answer any questions that you might have and give you information. And at the end of this, this is the part I'll probably say again, Felicia and I are around, and we want to make sure that we do a good job of answering all of your questions tonight. But then, as we approach town meeting and even after, that's what we should do for you or for anybody as we walk through this budget process. So thanks for having us.
Thank you for coming. We very much appreciate your time as well. We know you put a lot of time in outside of the normal school day to prepare for the budget and get things ready. So we appreciate that.
Yes, thank you.
In leading up to this, you should know that we've met with Paul as the liaison for the finance committee to school department, and we also had another meeting with Daniel and Paul. Appreciate the time that they gave us. We've also had meetings with Scott and Sonia, a couple of meetings. As soon as the state started coming out with numbers, appreciate the time that they've given us. We have our school committee's budget and finance subcommittee has spent time with us. The full committee. We've also done a public hearing of our budget. And the information I'm going to give you today is ever changing as we, I know there's a final number and that's the way it has to be. I will try to identify for you the places where things are apt or most likely to change or continue to change. Already from the packet that you received the first week of January, there have been changes. I sent the Finance Committee an update of both the PowerPoint and the major increase page. And if the committee would allow, I'd share my screen, and just, I don't feel like I should read to anyone or spend a lot of time in weeds that people don't want to go into. At the same time, I want to go just as quickly as you want to go, and I'd invite you to stop me at any point, if that's okay with the Finance Committee, and just ask the questions as they come. And Felicia and I have a friend on with me, phone a friend, Felicia, to help me with any questions you may ask.
It's definitely a good person to have as a phone a friend.
And I'll move through it.
Sounds good.
So I'm going to start by sharing my screen and the budget book. And if you'll give me 1 second, I'm used to using Teams.
Mm-hmm.
So am I sharing my table of contents of the budget book?
Not
No?
yet. Now you are.
Oh, now. Yes?
Now we got it.
Great, thank you. Sorry about that. So like I said, I wouldn't read to you, but I just want to give you some highlights off of the book that you received, if I could. It starts with an overview, and there are a lot of fixed costs in the school department, such as salaries. We know how many employees we have, but then every year or two, there seems to be different challenges. And so there's a budget message there that describes those. There's the budget planning and article schedule that we are by charter following with the town. There's student enrollment data. And so I want to highlight something to you here. If you look at the student enrollment data enclosed in this table of contents, I'm going to talk about that later in the presentation. And you're going to see this year's enrollment data in something I'm going to show you. And you may see slight differences between, if you compare the 2 pages in this year's enrollment. That's because this data enrollment in the budget book is taken sort of a census as of October 1st. That's the standard in schools when the census data is due to the state, because that gives things time to settle. That last column that you'll see tonight in my PowerPoint presentation is slightly different, because that was a snapshot of a more current time. That was as of January. And so you'll see a couple of 2 or 3 students and grade levels may move if you compare the two. I just want to anticipate that confusion that this may create. So I want to mention that. You'll see a breakdown of all of our staff. You'll see a budget proposal by accounts. You'll see increases by major categories. The instructional materials that we intend to purchase. You'll see then the budget book itself, a line by line, school by school, a budget book. So again, I wanted to give you a higher level overview of what to find there, not necessarily cover any of those sections, but just so that you know, as a reference, where a lot of information resides. Any questions, or should I move on? Okay.
Anyone have questions so far? I see a lot of heads shaking, so I think you're good to move on.
So let me give this another shot. How'd I do?
Perfect.
Great. So this has already changed since the January presentation, and I'll note where. Most importantly, for FY23, I want to talk about student population, movement, growth, and the types of students. So if you remember from last year, there was a commitment on the part of the state to provide extra money to districts based on their student population and types of students they have. something called the Student Opportunity Act. They call it SOA. So the state has made good on its commitment to provide those dollars. And the good news for Abington is that those dollars are not a standalone. They've been provided to the Chapter 7 through Chapter 70. Chapter 70 is the funding source for public schools in Massachusetts. And as a result of our increased numbers, we've seen quite an increase in our funding for education in Massachusetts in Abington. And I'll get into that a little bit deeper a little bit later. Excuse me. This budget also plans to maintain our commitment to the resources that we require, like hardware, software, and books, and then certain built-in increases such as contractual obligations that we have. We employ a lot of people. That's what we do when we teach children. So the vast majority of our dollars go into our contracts. Our contracts that we have dial in to the wage that people earn for the work that they do on the South Shore. We don't compare ourselves to communities outside the South Shore. We use the North River Collaborative communities, 8 or 9 school systems in the area, such as Rockland, Holbrook, Bridgewater Raynham, Whitman-Hanson, Hanover's a member. It's a consortium of districts that we use to do all of our comparisons when it comes to our salary accounts. The student population story is as follows. So this is the trend over a series of years, and you can see we've got this organized by school year and by grade, and then in the far right hand side you can see the actual number that is increased or decreased, and then the percent increase or decrease. One of the things, excuse me 1 second. One of the things that I wanted to highlight for everyone was you can see that our total enrollment number over this period of time has gone up just above 12%. So what we've been seeing in Abington is smaller classes graduate and larger classes enter the high school, which is why we've seen some of our largest increases in the schools at the high school level. If you add these together, we've added basically a whole other graduating class to the high school. I apologize if somebody has a question. I can't see everybody on my screen, so just stop me.
My quick math is correct. At the high school level, we've added about 130 students.
Right. So again, I'm sorry that I can't see everybody on my screen. Maybe I can show a grid. No, I'm not seeing them. So if somebody has a question, I'm going to need you to shout out for me, please. Oh, wait, I fixed it. I can see you all now.
I have found that to be quite tricky.
Sorry about that.
When presenting with only one screen to do it on.
So you'll also see at the early elementary level, we've seen some growth. One of the things that's happening in Abington is, growth is a good thing for a community. And I just need to say, though, from the school department, if Abington continues to grow, at some point, we're going to have to raise our hand and ask Abington to consider expanding the spaces we have for learning. We are not overcrowded. We're fine. We can't continue to grow at this rate and not ask the community to consider the construction or renovation to increase space for school children. That is not me saying that Abington shouldn't grow or should grow. That's not my place. My place is to worry about kids and tell the community that if we continue to grow at this pace, we're definitely going to be needing to ask for a place to educate the children of Abington, increased room. And I don't know how much growth that means. Felicia and I do enrollment data and a demographic study every single year to try to anticipate and have our due diligence so that we can give estimates on that. Again, right now we're fine, but I just like to tell everyone that, because if and when that day comes, people have been, I've done my job of informing people of where we are. So the other area that I really want to talk about is the number of English language learners. We've seen an increase of 170% over this time period. And again, the Student Opportunity Act has provided us money to educate these children. And when you see our budget priorities, they'll fall in line with what you're seeing here with our population. That's the responsible way to, I think, move forward. So this year, we saw a $2.1 million increase in our Chapter 70 funding for education in Abington. And I'm going to talk about more about that a little bit later. For a total of $12.9 million in Chapter 70 money. And again, you know, the state doesn't always come through. I feel fortunate that when we said to everybody over the last couple of years that they've promised this money, that they have come through with this money and they've made it a part of Chapter 70.
Peter, I have just a quick question on the English language learned. So I'm assuming on that designation, is that for a limited duration? I'm assuming at some point you develop a proficiency where you no longer qualify for that designation.
That's exactly right. Okay. Can I just take a moment? I'll describe it a little more deeply.
That'd be great.
So we get children who don't speak English at all. We get some children that have some level of sophistication with English, and some of them have missed a year or two of school, depending on what their life circumstances have been in whatever country they're coming from. So what we're required to do is we're required to do testing to determine how much language acquisition they have when they arrive. And then intermittently, additional testing is done to see how quickly they're learning the English language. Simultaneously, we educate them in all of our areas of study so that they don't fall behind. Then, if they don't make adequate progress with those academics, we also will at some point test them for special education, because it may not be a language barrier that's holding them back. It could be something else. And so then at some point in the process, yes, when they acquire language skills, they leave that just the way you described. But they are working both in all academic areas with kids in Abington who are English speakers. And then there's also a time, depending on their language skills, where they're taken and they do other and extra work in both English and in those academic areas to catch them up, or to catch them up as much as possible if you don't, speak any English. I mean, so you have to imagine some of our children come to us, and if the teacher says turn to page 5, they have no idea what page 5 is. So it's really, they require quite a bit of support.
Great, thank you.
No, I appreciate the question.
Another question to that, Peter, and this is Matt, and just a reminder to the committee, if you are asking a question, please state your name so people know who was asking the question. That last one was Andrew Leverall. This is Matt. Are we seeing consistency with the languages that they are speaking coming in?
Got a variety. We've got a variety.
Or more so, how wide is the variety, and how hard is that for the staff to
the majority
adjust?
The majority are Portuguese speakers.
Yep, that's what I had heard.
The vast majority, but we have other languages in the group. So,
Peter, this is Greg. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
You had mentioned the other towns that we sort of do back and forth with, and are the other towns seeing 170% jump?
I don't know the answer to that question. I know that Rockland has seen quite the increase, but I couldn't I wouldn't want to tell you I know if I don't know.
Where would that information be?
Each town would have that information.
And have we seen jumps like that previously?
So you can see over time, over the last 5 years. Prior to that, I want to say prior to the 16-17 school year, I'm going from memory, we had, 20 or 30 or 40, and we were seeing jumps of, 10, 15. And now we're seeing, double that in the last year. We actually thought because of COVID, we wouldn't see much of an increase because we didn't think that people were able, to move as much as a result of the pandemic. So.
Interesting.
Can I also this is Felicia, can I also just add that, students with, that are English learners come in at all the grade levels as well, kindergarten to 12th grade, with vastly different language skills.
This is Chris Murphy. I'm interested in the fact that it seems like the student enrollment is 12% over 5 years. The overall population isn't up nearly that much. Any theory on are we getting more of the kids in Abington schools?
Great question. What we knew would happen when we built the school was that we would keep more of the students. If you look at these numbers, you'll see a decline from 8th to 9th grade every year going across these two columns. You see the biggest diagonally. For example, in the school year 2021, we had 170, and it dropped to 132 when they were 9th graders. So the majority of the increase at the high school level has been those smaller classes leaving, graduating, and the larger classes coming. And we're holding on to more of our students in the Abington Public Schools that aren't choosing to leave to either get a private education, a vocational education, go to a charter school. Those are all children should go to the school that they want to go to, where they're going to receive the best education. But this is good news for Abington because it means more of the residents, more of the population have skin in the game in their public school. They're sending their children to our schoolhouses. So we knew that would happen because we had so many kids that were leaving. And that should be leveled off now. It'll move depending on different factors. We saw, we did a deeper dive into some of these numbers, and we actually saw that we lost a good portion of our English learners in 1 year that went back to their country of origin. And we didn't anticipate that. And I couldn't explain to you why. I have a hypothesis that maybe because of COVID, many of their families were essential employees. Many of their parents might have been essential employees, and at that time there wasn't work. I don't know for sure, but that's a theory I have, and I hope I answered the question.
Yes, thank you.
So you'll see in our budget priorities, providing a half-time person and a half-time person at Woodsail and the Beaverbrook, that would be one full-time equivalency, one person, and then another person at the middle school. So that would be 2 in total. We would be able to restructure the entire department. And so this is a benefit to our English learners and all of the students in all of our classrooms. Because again, the English learners are in the classrooms with all of our students. The English learners need this support, but then it provides additional support for those classrooms that are trying to meet all those challenges where all of the children are. At the high school, where we've seen that growth, adding a math teacher would mean being able to better offer the AP program. It's not that we're not offering AP, but sometimes you get down to a decision where you've got a small number of students wanting AP statistics, but you've got 30, 32 students in an algebra class, and you have to decide how to divide the baby, how to fit the schedule best for those students. This would mean that we'd be able to better offer AP stats. Math boot camp helps to remediate students into the basic skills in math. Algebra 1 Part 1. We're seeing some of our students, especially post-pandemic, coming out of the younger grades that they need more algebra. So they would get that support both in math boot camp and Algebra 1 Part 1. There'd be lower enrollments in those math classes, and obviously that's a place where students need math's important. The grade 2 teacher. So I said we do demographic studies. We're hopeful that we'll see a decrease in the number of kindergarteners that we see. And it's not that we don't want kindergartners, we do. But if we see that decrease in kindergarten, we'll be able to move a kindergarten teacher to grade 2 to satisfy this need. We know we're going to need a grade 2 teacher or to move someone or to hire someone. We will better know exactly how many kindergartners we'll have in the coming months, so we can make a final decision on that. Because kindergartners come from privates, sometimes it's an unknown until you go through registration. Some people don't have their children in any of the preschools. So we call the preschools, we try to get a number. The demographic studies tell us how many children were born 5 years ago. If they stayed in Abington, we'll see them. If they didn't, we won't. Adding a history teacher at the high school, we had 80 students that couldn't get seats in our current program at the high school because of numbers. This would mean that we'd be able to better accommodate those students. And then in our program of studies that we can't run because we don't have the teacher for it, the time in the teacher schedule, it adds a class called History versus Hollywood, which doesn't sound like it's a meaty class. It really is. Because it makes it interesting because it compares and it contrasts Hollywood's version of history to what really happened, and then a State of the Union class. These are other positions that I'm not going to spend a lot of time on unless people want to ask me about them. They're not in the budget proposal. So we get proposals from everywhere across the system, and it's important that we at least make decisions sort of like a household budget in terms of where our values are and where we need. These are all important things. These would be things that we could use, but with the populations that I showed you and the needs, those ones that I mentioned earlier came to the top of the pile. So for the major increase page, there's an anticipation that to maintain our contractual obligations, $907,940. The new positions that I highlighted to you are $278,876. We factor in our salary scale, it's a master's 5. Some people will come in a little cheaper than that. Some people might come in more expensive than that. But that's the average that we have found. And so that's the number that we use. There's a retirement offset. We know that we have 3 of our teachers and a tutor who are retiring. So we will hire back people at a cheaper rate for a total anticipated cost to the salary account of $1,101,768. I'm going to spend a minute on programs of the districts and special education tuitions because this is a number that changes quite frequently. We have children that receive their education outside of the Abington public school buildings because they have such significant challenges and needs that they are best served with specialized instruction. Some of these children have multi-handicapping conditions. They could be bedridden. Some of these costs range from $40,000, $50,000 a year for a child that goes to a school every day and then comes home, to a residential setting for, again, someone with multiple handicapping conditions. It could be hundreds of thousands of dollars, $300,000 plus. And the reason that this is so fluid is because those placements for those students can change. We always try to keep kids in the district if we can, if it's responsible to do so. We always try to bring students back to the district if we can, if it's responsible to do so. It's always better for children to receive their education amongst their peers in their community, so they can share in that experience. And you know, when you've got a school that has the richness of PE and different teachers and the experience of recess and all of those things that our schools have, you want children to be exposed to those things. But then some kids, their conditions are so great that they need more specialized instruction, so they have to go out for those services. So that's why that number changes quite frequently, because those placements change. The circuit breaker offset, Felicia is anticipating at 70%. So that's a reimbursement. So that's money that we spent last year for students that go out of the district. There is a threshold of, I think it's about $48,000, Felicia. And for every dollar spent above that $48,000 mark, the state, Felicia is anticipating, will pay us 70 cents back on the dollar in reimbursement. So Felicia is anticipating a reduction in our reimbursement of $18,252.
An increase.
Sorry, I did that wrong again. An increase. The parentheses, yeah, represents an increase in that of $18,252. Thank you, phone a friend. For in this area, an increase of $148,707. Other school services, the special education transportation, that changes as student placements change. Students can move into Abington from another zip code, and that changes this. Students can move out of Abington, and that changes it. Felicia is anticipating $46,044. Oh, I'm sorry. The first transportation piece is our bus increase. People do pay a fee for buses, but that doesn't cover the total cost of transportation. Our school buses, Felicia anticipates, because she has the contract, will increase $46,044. The special education transportation that I was talking about with students moving from different places is the $18,209 for a total increase of $64,253.
Hey, Peter, it's Matt. Quick question. How are we doing with bus drivers? I know that's been an issue a lot of places.
It's, I appreciate every one of the drivers we have. It's been a challenge. There's been days when people have had to double up on runs, which means we make a robocall to families at schools and we say, we apologize. Your bus could be 20 minutes late today, because you've got buses picking up extra runs. The dispatcher drives, the qualified people at the bus lot will drive. It's been difficult. I mean, knock on wood, we have not been hit the way a lot of places have been hit. But there were a couple of weeks there where it was really thin, and just people getting sick with COVID were out. And then plus on top of that, it takes a month to get the license to drive a bus. So it takes a while to get those people in the pipeline just to employ them. Great question. Technology and instructional materials. So we want to get into an ongoing cycle in a responsible way for the replacement of the laptops that we're using. This will purchase enough laptops for a class and a half, which will get us in that cycle that we can replace them. I believe that Scott and Sonia have already taken this $200,000 out of our budget. So you may see there's a difference between our budgets. There's been a commitment on the part of the town to move these into the capital plan and put them at the top of the capital plan list, so that we can get into that cycle. The computers that this will be replacing will be 6 years old, and those 6-year-old computers will go to the elementary school. We don't throw them out. We get every moment of life out of them. Then when, if and when the batteries can be replaced, they'll be cannibalized so we can continue to use them. So I think you're going to see a difference between the town manager's budget and this budget of $200,000. And that should be it. That should be the reason.
Peter, Andrew Leverell, can we just go back to the special education budget for 1 second? And I don't want to throw you on the spot with this. This is more maybe a question for Sonia and Scott as well. Last week we discussed, I think it was about 14,000 in the town's budget for North River Collaborative. Did we ever determine what that allocation was for?
I think I have the answer.
All right.
Yeah, we did get the answer. Peter, you can chime in here because you might actually know more than I do, but it's for school-based Medicaid costs.
I stole it. I stole the answer from Felicia.
Okay, Felicia gave me the answer, so.
Felicia, you should take credit. Why don't you?
You should.
So each year, the Abington Public Schools tracks students that receive various services and are eligible for Medicaid reimbursement. And the town of Abington contracts with North River Collaborative to submit all of the paperwork, if you will, to the federal government for that for the reimbursement. And you should see the reimbursement, I think as part of revenue. Sonia, I think it's a line, part of revenue that comes into the town. So it's money that's collected for services that are provided in the school department, and then it becomes part of the general fund revenue on the town side. And there's a number of vendors across the state that provide the service to do the Medicaid reimbursement. It's, from my understanding, very involved, and we contract with North River Collaborative. I believe the amount in the budget is an average of how much has been paid over a number of years. And my understanding is that how much we pay is a percentage of how much is collected, or it's how much is reimbursed to the town.
So we provide the service, and we're obligated to do that for these families anyway. But then the town gets the reimbursement for them. I think it's a substantial amount of money.
Gotcha. So if you're getting like speech or occupational therapy within the school system, you can get that reimbursed. Understood. Okay, thank you.
And I couldn't tell you what the cost ratio is in terms of cost of service compared to reimbursement. But it's money we don't want to leave on the table. We want to capture that reimbursement.
Yep.
Great, thank you.
No, it's a good question. So for instructional materials, the decrease of $43,765 for a total of $156,235 for a total increase to this budget of $1,470,963, and the total preliminary budget of $27,949,776. Important to note, when it comes to the overall budget and the news with the increased Chapter 70 funding, if you took last year's school department budget of $26.4 million, and we did receive an increase last year in Chapter 70 funding, but the total amount of $10.8 million, our request from the town to support funding in FY23 is actually just over $600,000 less than in FY22. About $630,000. You can see the different town contributions. In FY22 was $15.6 million, and in FY23 it's a request for 14.9.
It's Matt Sala. Question. I think it was 2 years ago when the Student Opportunity Act was first put on the table by the state and ended up getting pulled off with COVID coming and stuff. At that time, when we were working through your budget with you, I believe that there were a fair amount of strings attached from the state of things that you had to comply with, and like positions that you had to make sure that you had and things of that nature. Are those things still in place, or did they change, or did they go away completely with it going into Chapter 70?
We're required to demonstrate how these dollars impact the disadvantaged populations that they are intended for.
Yep. So what are the things that we are? I remember there were, I don't remember exactly what they were, but there were specific positions that we had to add. Are those in essence now the English language positions, or are there other things that are being added for this?
No, those positions that you saw.
Okay.
And you saw that, you know, with the increased population at the high school, we've got our positions there. You
Yep.
saw, and in that grid with populations, you also saw that we do have an increase in elementary age population. I mean, the families that are moving in are younger families to Abington. Again, that's good news. Growth is
Yep.
good. Young families is healthy for a community, but that's why we have that concern with kindergarten and second grade that I tried to explain.
Thank you.
May I just add, and as Peter said, the Student Opportunity Act increase is based on EL students, special education, and our general overall increase in enrollment. So all of our positions address those areas.
Excellent. Thank you, Felicia.
Can I answer any questions, or is there anything that we should go deeper into?
Paul?
Paul Haggerty. Peter, you mentioned earlier about the salaries and looking, you know, kind of comparing us against the North River Collaborative. Where would Abington fall, you know, as far as when we compare ourselves? Is it on the high end, the low end? Where are salaries typically? Where would you rate them?
I really appreciate the question. Across the entire organization, whether it's teachers or tutors or paraprofessionals, administration, we fall in the average range for the South Shore. And I mean, we may be off by position plus or minus within $1,000, but the aggregate of all the employees annually, you know, somebody may be $800 lower, somebody may be $500 higher, but we fall right in those comparisons. I lived through in this job with, unfortunately, you know, Felicia and I were working together at the time. If you remember something called the Great Recession, and you go to bed at night and you think about the people that you've had to let go and the impact on kids and the impact on the people that you've let go, and you worry about your contracts and, you know, are they too high in value? You know, and you worry if they're too low in value that you can't get good people to teach your kids. You need, you know, and you get people at the table in negotiations that are high and low. You know, they want the teachers to, you know, come in the morning and stoke coal in the boiler and not get paid for it, and take everything. And then you get, you know, then you get people that want to make sure that educators are paid more money because the work that they do is critical work for humanity. So the thing that settles the argument is going to the average wage. And that's how you provide good service for kids because you're able to get, the best qualified candidate for positions. And then when you have things like the Great Recession, you still lose a lot of sleep at night, but you're paying people, you're paying the carpenter what the carpenter earns, you're paying the plumber what the plumber earns, you're paying the going rate right in the average. So it took us some time to do that, but that's where we are right now. So I really appreciate the question, because we spent a lot of time getting the system in that place.
Okay, thank you. And I just have one other question. And as far as looking at the enrollment and the trends, but right now, if the trend stayed steady, let's say if the numbers stayed steady where they are around, 2070 students, we're not looking at needing additional space in the district.
No,
Okay.
we'll always have projects like a roof or a boiler, heating system, but we don't need additional space with what we have. It's really dependent on housing in Abington, who moves in.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you for the questions.
Oh, wait, sorry, I do have another question.
This is the zinger.
But so this question for Scott first. How do we fund the capital plan?
So this year, we haven't quite gotten to that point yet, but we do have a certain amount of free cash that we'll use for it. We also have the ARPA money.
Okay.
Ultimately, we're kind of waiting for, and I have a meeting Thursday with the Collins Center on where they are with that, with the long-term plan. And then we're going to look at what we have in our immediate needs. And then we have that money that we're going to, start looking at how we're going to fund the plan, fund the different immediate capital that we have to take care of.
Okay, thank you. And so Peter, just in case I missed it, so if the $200,000 for laptops was approved at town meeting, you were able to, what grades now would be covered with technology?
I appreciate the question, because this has been something, especially with the pandemic, that's been critical to providing, service to kids. So grades 5 through 12 take the computers home. And then at the elementary level, again, we take those computers after the older kids use them, and they go to the elementary level for them to use. So we're pretty close to 1-to-1 at the elementary level, but they don't take them home.
Okay. Almost set. Thank you.
This is Matt again. I have a question on that, and it's probably more to Scott on this, where the replacement of computers is likely to be more of a yearly budgetary cost. Is that something we should be moving to the capital plan, or is that something we should be factoring into the school's budget?
No, where it's technology, I think that, certainly we know that over the next 2 or 3 years, it's definitely part of the plan, but there's the way that technology changes, grows. I think we need the flexibility of being in the capital plan, and we may look at that in another year or two and say, you know what, it isn't changing, it is recurring. Let's just put it into the budget. But I think this year, at least for this year, maybe in next year, I think it should be in capital, but we're certainly open to continuing that discussion. There could be years where they decide they don't need as many, or they find that they're lasting longer than they should. Or again, they may just find that there's a better device. Maybe it's less expensive, but this gives us that flexibility.
Thank you. That's
And just to follow up on Paul's question from earlier, I'm sorry, Andrew Leverell, where are we in the contract right now with the Educators Association? How many years are left in that, or?
0 years. Good question. We are currently negotiating the contract. Actually, we get 3-year contracts. Last year, rather than negotiate a successor agreement, we provided a cost of living increase of 2% across the contract to kick it forward a year. And this is the year we're going to negotiate for the next 3 years.
Okay, so the figures you had earlier on the presentation, those could change depending on the contract negotiations.
That provides an enablement under Chapter 150E for negotiations.
Okay.
A quick question. It's Barbara Ray, more for Scott. Are we in line now with the town's contracts with the major unions in line with the school?
You mean, do they expire at the same time?
Yes.
No. We actually, a couple of them, I think, are just because we did some 1-year extensions, but and maybe they did over at the school too. But we do have a couple of them that we're in negotiation with for the a 3-year contract. So those ones are in line, but there's a couple that we also recently finished, and then one that hasn't expired yet. So they're not all in line. I don't know that I want them to all be in line, to be quite honest with you.
At one time, I know there was actually probably back more towards the 2010, 11, 12 time period that there was a sense to try and get them closer in line for bargaining purposes. I don't know how helpful that is. I just was curious.
They just, it's always comparing apples to oranges anyway.
Right.
Go from one contract to the other. But there's a lot of time that is involved in in the negotiations, and so it's tough when I just have 2 of them, never mind 3 or 4 that are all lining up.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, Scott, that it might be better to have them on kind of more of a rotation than
it does seem to be easier. So
although if they're all at once, the other 2 years would probably be much easier for you.
There's always something else that'll come up.
There is indeed. Maybe there'll be a pandemic.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
This is Matt. Oh, sorry, Chris, go ahead.
No, just for Peter, this is Chris Murphy. I noticed that all the positions you're adding are pretty much instructor positions. There's no administrative, the administrative positions in the numbers you gave us, it's in one of your back sheets, has been very constant. Is there some point at which that has to change? And is it near future?
That's a good question. I don't anticipate it in the near future. And when you compare system to system, it's hard to do an apples to apples comparison. The best way to do it is just dollars spent on administration, because everybody in one system has different titles than another system. Somebody may be a director of curriculum and instruction, and they're also the director of technology. So they're all always divided up different ways. I don't anticipate anything at this time.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So this is Matt. I know a few years ago, I can't remember if it was the high school or if it was the entire school system won the Blue Ribbon Award. And I was just wondering if you keep track of sort of the school system rankings and other things like that, and how the district is doing in that regard, as that's definitely a factor in sort of all of the finances of the town. Good schools bring good property values and young families and all sorts of good things to the town. And I know that you guys have been working really hard over the last, at least the whole time I've been here, to continue to improve the standing of Abington schools. So
Well, I appreciate you mentioning that, and I appreciate the question. Appreciate the chance to, we have good kids. I get a chance to brag about our kids when you ask that question. Abington sends us good kids, and I do feel like I work with the best people in the world at educating those kids. They care about the kids. COVID has thrown, the entire world, the entire country, the state, and Abington, a lot of curveballs with academics. Having said that, if you were to compare us across other communities in Massachusetts, in the MCAS testing that was done last year around student achievement in the areas that MCAS tests, our students did well compared to other communities in the state. We struggled in math at the middle school level. We did not fare well in math at the middle school, but in the other places, we did really well, comparatively speaking. Having said that, during COVID, kids didn't get what kids got pre-COVID. We hit COVID. I feel awful when I say this. If there was ever a sweet spot to hit a pandemic, we hit it because we built the building and the technology that afforded us. And then we did so much professional development with the technology that the building that was provided by the building for the year and a half, 2 years before COVID hit. Then COVID hit. And so all of the remote learning we did was awful. But Abington had the advantage of having the laptops, having their teachers who did a remarkable job of transforming these online pages and resources. Again, it wasn't satisfactory to many people, and I understand that because nothing can beat in-person learning. But if you were to do a side-by-side comparison of Abington compared to other communities where they had buses rolling through towns passing out worksheets because they technology that we have, we fared better than the majority of communities in Massachusetts. And I would think, Massachusetts always outscores the rest of the country. So I would say nationally, we did better. And it's a tough comparison to make because it was so awful. I guess we did less bad as other people. You could say it that way also. So I appreciate the question.
Can I just also add that, Felicia, that, another kind of feather in the cap is the commitment that the town has made to resources for education over the last number of years. And, and along with state aid, being able to, we're expanding program at the secondary level. And we've been able to keep class sizes to a reasonable place at the elementary schools. So, those are also things that definitely play in. It might not be directly tied to test scores, but it is. It's a value of the commitment to education, building a school, funding capital projects. Those are all things that people look at and make the town appealing.
So, the population's going up, right? The good news is you're living in a place where people want to live.
I will say one of the things that surprised me to learn recently is that the population of Abington and the population of Rockland are now almost the same. And I think it was just 10 years ago that was drastically different, like many thousand people different. And Rockland's been kind of staying the same and Abington has been approaching it. So I was very surprised to see how close our populations were when I looked at census numbers. Felicia, you mentioned capital. I believe you had capital items other than the laptops. Do you want to run through some of that stuff with us?
Or Peter, do you want me to do it, or you want?
Either of you, it's fine. I was only mentioning that Felicia mentioned capital items.
Yeah.
So it wasn't intended to single you out there.
Oh, I just didn't know.
It's using it as a segue.
Yep, let me just pull it up.
A little of me goes a long way, so I'll mute myself.
We had a number of capital items, and we met with is it Collins Center that is doing the long-term capital planning, and I know a number of our items, well, all of our items have been submitted through them, but for our capital requests, we again have put the Woodsdale roof on as a capital request. It's something that's been on there for many years. The roof is past its lifespan, but it is able to still be repaired. But at some point, it will need to be a full roof replacement. And we're hoping when that time comes that we'll be able to cost share with MSBA on that. We have a number of new items on the capital plan. One is, excuse me, the refurbishment of the walk-in refrigerator, walk-in freezer at the Woodsdale School. That's original to that building, and there is some freeze-thaw issues with that. We have been able to make the repairs that have been needed, but at some point that will need to be a replacement. The cafeteria furniture at both the Beaverbrook and the Woodsdale are over 20 years old, and they are becoming more and more difficult to open and close. Parts are breaking. We were able to get parts for them in years past, and those are becoming more and more difficult to obtain. So not me, the maintenance department has been able to cannibalize, a table or two to repair a number of other tables. And so that is something that, again, not an immediate need, but it is something that we'll have to look at in the near future. The Beaverbrook Elementary School HVAC system, heating system is another area that we would like to have a full assessment of our HVAC system. It's a steam system that's original to the building. The building is built on a concrete slab, and all of the heating pipes go through the slab. So we've had, for example, steam leaks that we've had to, our maintenance staff or a contractor has had to come in, jackhammer through the floor, find the steam leak, replace the leak, fix the floor, fix the tiles, and reopen school, a day or two later. Luckily, we've been able to make those repairs on weekends, but it's an antiquated system, and we would like to have the funding to have a consultant come in and do a full evaluation of the system and make recommendations for either, replacement or upgrades. Excuse me. We also have a request to repave all the surfaces, including the parking lot, drives, and the play area and back. And we have a budgetary figure from the DPW on that. The playground equipment is also over 20 years old in the back of the Beaverbrook. So it's the Beaverbrook School playground, not the Beaverbrook playground, which is the wooden structures. These are the play structures that are located behind the pickup and drop off area behind the Beaverbrook. It's also, we have those inspected and repaired each year, but the repairs are becoming a little more challenging, and it's also not all ADA compliant. There are pieces of it that are ADA compliant, but not all of it. The gym floor at the Beaverbrook is the original floor to the second gym, which is the addition, the furthest gym. And it is starting to, the finish is starting to delaminate from the wood, and we would like to have a resurface of the floor and include repainting of that floor. And at the Frollo School, we have an antiquated main electrical switch that we would like to have replaced, and antiquated sub panels to the electrical switch. And one of our main priorities on our list, besides the technology moving to it, is the lead paint abatement and painting of the exterior of the Frollo. And Again, that's an item that you've seen the last few years. That is something that each year that it's not abated and painted, is more chance of the wood to be rotted and become a much more expensive repair and impact the integrity, the exterior integrity of that building.
Just as a, this is Matt, just as a quick point of note for any of the newer people on the committee or anyone watching, the Frollo School building is no longer being used as an education building, but it is being used for administration and offices for the department, correct?
It's also, you know, the gym is used during the week. We have a very robust pickleball program that is there during the day. It's used evenings, afternoons and evenings by high school sports and community sports, and it's used on the weekends also for community athletics. The locker rooms are used for the sports that happen on Memorial Field. And we also have North River Collaborative, which we've referred to a couple of times tonight, uses one of the classrooms there for a vocational, special education vocational program. So there are high school students from North River Collaborative districts that are there during the school day as well.
That last part.
We also have a Boys and Girls Club here in the afternoons. The maintenance department uses it for a place to fabricate doors, shelving, things like that, and then deploy them out with a carpentry shop, plumbing, electrical shop in the basement. It's used by the drama program for storage. It's used by food service, special education, accounts payable. Am I forgetting? Felicia?
The American Legion, is it the American Legion?
Yep, it has a room upstairs. So believe it or not, we use about
Quite a bit.
80% of the building, and it's a public building. That's what it's here for. So we try to use it. A donor who wants to remain anonymous just replaced the entire gym floor.
Wow, excellent.
Yeah, and it's beautiful. If you've ever seen that gym, everybody comments it's the gym from Hoosiers, and
yep,
it's beautiful. So
it is nice that our drama productions now are in a beautiful new auditorium, but
yes,
gym is beautiful.
I'll say, as a many-time drama parent and attendee, as much as the Frollo gym was a quaint atmosphere, having the new auditorium with seating and also slightly better climate control is very, very nice improvement.
So Matt, you're saying you didn't like sitting on the heaters in the bleachers?
Some of the time I loved sitting on the heaters, and other times I hated sitting on the heaters. So depended on the time of year. I will say my back never enjoyed sitting on the heaters. What other questions do folks have for Peter and Felicia? What other parts of the budget? I know it's a very large budget. We have not gone line by line the way we do with a lot of the other departments. I definitely want to make sure that people can ask any questions that they have.
maybe I could just, I want to reiterate, I want to thank, Paul Haggerty and Daniel Eddy for the time that they spent with us.
Yep.
I want to thank you for your review of this, our own subcommittee, and also, Scott and Sonia have helped us with it. And I want to repeat what I said at the beginning. We're not going anywhere. So if you have a question, if you think of it later, please ask us now, but if you think of it later, we're here.
And I will confirm that Peter truly means that. He's talked to me and mentioned finance committee and budget things in the aisles of Costco before. So definitely always available and always willing to answer a question and talk, which is very, very much appreciated. Barbara, you usually ask more questions.
I know, I do, it's pretty clear. I didn't really have many questions. Peter, did you go over the one thing I always like when we do have new members is the unpredictableness of the special education budget, and also some of the aspects of the special education budget that the medical aspect of it, things that people may be unaware of, that we need to cover costs for.
The good news is that students that are medically fragile because of advances in medicine are reaching school age, whereas previous years, you go back decades, or that wasn't the case. So we're seeing more and more challenging children. The good news is that they're surviving and coming to schools because of advances in medicine. So special education is always going to be that area with increased costs because we honor our commitment to provide education to all children, despite whatever disability or challenges they may have. And that's why it's so fluid. I did talk a little bit about the changes of placements. People move in, people move out, and trying to provide that level of service that we all want for kids.
That's such a hard target number to nail down too, because you could have someone that moves into town that requires a nurse on transport to the school that they're going to, and it's not a medical cost, it's a educational cost somehow.
Right.
So things like that play into your budget that there's just, those are some that can cause a big jump in the cost.
For example, you could have a child that has a seizure disorder that needs to move from one place to another, which requires a monitor to make sure that if they had a seizure that they'd get the medical attention they need. And so that adds money that the school department's responsible to pay for. And those are the things that fluctuate all the time.
I also, our director of student services, Dr. Robbins, and our out-of-district placement coordinator, Annie Robbins, they also work with other agencies across the state. So if there are students that may qualify for other types of service, Department of Family and Children, or Department of Mental Health, they'll work with those departments also if the student might be eligible. And so we're looking at other funding sources as well, if it's oftentimes those are dead ends, but every stone is overturned to see. We also do residency checks. If there's a question about whether someone actually lives in town, there are things that we can do to try to determine or make sure that they're living in town. If there's a family that's the parents are not living together, then we also will have conversations with the other community that the other parent lives in and do cost share agreements. And that works both ways, of course. We get those calls also that a parent is living in Abington, the student isn't, but for special education services, depending on the threshold, there's cost shares on that too. So it's a huge it is a significant portion of our budget, but it's something that has a lot of oversight.
And Felicia, to that point, it's about 10% of your budget, isn't it? That program's with other districts.
Yep, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So on a $28 million budget, it's a big number.
Yep.
It is, yeah. And in no way, I don't want anyone to think that in any way that I or anyone would be suggesting that that those, you know, those anyone's child shouldn't receive everything that they're entitled to receive. I just disagree on some things that I believe fall under what falls under, you know, who should pay for it?
Yeah, the
Education
medical
or
system.
Who is
medical,
responsible for it?
insurance, you know.
Thank you for saying that. You know, I think we all believe that every child deserves the services that they need.
Absolutely.
It's just we're talking about the, you know, the financial impact of that.
Right,
But
where
we
the
have
money's
that obligation,
from.
and we'll continue, you know, we continue to, you know, students get placed in the least restrictive environment, and sometimes that's very restrictive
Mm.
for them.
It's one of the, not to get on I'm getting on a soapbox. Here I go. It's one of the blessings of being an American. Not all countries treat their children this way, and their citizens. There are countries where if you had a child with a disability, they're out of luck.
Not all states either.
Mm.
It's true.
Thank you very much.
What other questions? And while I'm waiting for questions, just a quick note to the Abington CAM folks. I know Greg had to hop out to take a business call, but is trying to get back in and has been unable to do so. Something about the meeting being locked. So if someone could check in on that, that would be great. Oh, and there we go. Sorry about that disruption. I'd be very surprised if we are done with the schools before 8:30. That would be a first in my time. I know that Peter and Felicia put an outstanding amount of work into this, so I'm not surprised that they have it very streamlined for us, but it's definitely usually a longer night. I will say that. But it seems like we are done for tonight with you. Peter, Felicia, thank you very much. As I was saying, you guys put a ton of work into this. We really appreciate all of the work that you do. We know that you guys are a very large percentage of our town's budget, and that's very much a decision that the town has continued to make over and over again to invest in the schools. I know that you guys work very hard with Scott and his office to make sure that you are cognizant of the amount of the budget you are, and you're respectful to other departments as well and work hard. I think we can see that in this year's numbers. And the town commitment, the town contribution that you pointed out going down despite the budget going up. So we very much appreciate all of your work on that, and we appreciate your time tonight and the time that you've already spent with Paul and Daniel. And I know they provided us with reports that helped to make tonight go smoothly. So definitely thank you for all of the work and all of the time that you've put in.
Thank you for having us. And again, we're around. We'll want to answer all your questions as they come.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're gonna bow out, so thanks.
Yep,
Okay.
absolutely. All right, with that, Scott or Sonia, any updates for this week on the budget or overall, or should we wait for 2 weeks from tonight? I know Sonia, we had presented Sonia with some questions about other post-employment benefits, also known as OPEB, that I think she was preparing information for us. I think it would be wise to have that as a full-blown agenda item for our next meeting, so that she can be as prepared as possible and that the audience can be as prepared as possible, rather than trying to kind of tuck it in under general discussion.
Sure.
If that's okay with everyone. I know Chris had some serious interest in that, so.
Yeah, the next meeting, will we be able to Zoom in even though the rest of it's in person?
Yes, we
Yeah.
will still be hybrid as necessary
Okay,
for that meeting. And actually, I know we have our director of Abington Cam, Kevin Tossi, on. I think he can confirm that, or will confirm during the week as necessary. So the next question is, do we have any liaison reports? I'll bring our agenda back up. If I can find it, there it is. Do we have any liaison reports for tonight?
I don't. It's Barbara.
All right, looks like we're good there. We do not have correspondence. Oh, Paul?
Yeah, I just have a question for Scott and Sonia. When there was discussion that we were going to have a joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen to discuss the budget on February 21st. What's the status of that?
Well, February 21st is a holiday. Town hall will be closed, so that was my mistake. So I'm going to push it out, and to be quite honest, if I wanted to be a little further along with the budget, I think I'd like to see it maybe the third week in March. But I will confirm that with them and this group. But I'd like to have that, the budget pretty much done, and I would like to have the report from the Collins Center and our capital plan to present at the same time. And I think it would be great to have had the conversation that we're going to have with Sonia on the OPEB and stuff like that, because that'll lead into what we're going to do with our financial policies. And it would be good to sort of do that and all of that together in a joint meeting.
And will the OPEB discussion include any management letter comments from our external auditors? Because they've commented it on in the last couple of years. So will their
comment will be, I'm not going to address their comment directly. I mean, that's not going to be part of it. We'll be talking more about the actuarial valuation report, and the concerns that the auditors have are the same concerns that Scott and I have. So those, I mean, we'll be discussing them, but not in terms of them being a comment from the audit.
Okay, and what is the status of the audit?
I still just have the drafts.
Okay. And do we know when we're getting sign off?
I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Matt.
Yep. Thank you, Paul. So no correspondence, but as mentioned, we will be in person, or at least hybrid, as of our next meeting on March 2nd. So we'll be able to check our mailbox and see what we've got waiting for us there. We do not have minutes to review right now. Quick Get well message to our recording secretary, Deb, who fell and broke her wrist and is
Oh,
in
no.
a lot of pain. A lot of pain right now. We hope she gets better quickly. We've got Russ and Joe, who are both not here, are going to be working on some of the back minutes that we owe and reviewing notes and minutes from tonight off of the recording. So we will have minutes next time around. But we do not have any for right now.
Feel better, Deb.
Yes, absolutely. And that brings us to, surprisingly enough, to the end of our meetings with department heads. I believe we've gotten all of our departments. Is that right, Sonia? Oh, you're on mute.
That again, I'm sorry.
I believe that brings us to the end of the department head meetings.
Yeah, next week, or obviously we're off next week.
Next
The
meeting.
following week, we'll be talking to the Community Preservation Committee.
Okay.
But they obviously have their own budget, but they do like to keep the committee updated on the projects that they're looking to do. So they'll be presenting on the 2nd, the same day that we'll be doing the OPEB discussion.
Okay.
But yeah, all the other departments are complete. You know, we've talked to the departments and let them know that if the finance committee wanted to see them again, you could certainly bring them back if you had extensive questions for a specific department.
Excellent. Thank you. So again, that brings us to the end, or essentially the end. Community preservation is sort of a kind of a department, but brings us mostly to the end of our department, and we dig into the budget as a whole starting next meeting with all of the information we've gathered over the last few months. So with that, as stated, our next meeting is on March 2nd. It will be hybrid in the Cotter Room in Town Hall and on Zoom. Any other discussion for tonight?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
I hear a motion from Andrew and a second from Barbara. Is there any discussion on the motion? Without any, I'll do a quick roll call. Chris?
Hi.
Paul?
Aye.
Daniel?
Aye.
Andrew?
Aye.
Barbara?
Aye.
Greg? Greg is on mute. I vote aye, and I think we'll let Greg abstain unless he chimes in before Abington Cam can end the meeting. So with that, we are adjourned. Thank you everyone for your time, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Have a good
everybody.
Thank you. Good night.